If your only way of getting a girl ever was like relying on the fact that she couldn't work, that means you're a weak man.
When women needed men, families worked out. Soon as women didn't need men, now all of a sudden families don't work out.
Then
how many men?
Hold, let me finish. I gotta go through. If you want to go point by point after we can, but I gotta respond to everything.
Women have changed. Like y'all talked about. They can work and make their own money. A guy making enough money to basically put a roof over her head, that's not enough. He has to be able to do more. He has to be able to present more. And if this regular woman who would get with a regular guy who could, put a roof over her head and that was enough, is basically saying this regular guy has to go above and beyond regular just to get with a regular chick. So that I agree with you that like men have to do more now, but like what they were doing before was an embarrassingly bare minimum. Like you have to work a job and that was it. And now you have to actually be a good partner. And I think that men need to spend more time like figuring out what it means to be a good partner in a relationship. I think it's a little bit, yeah, go ahead. Obviously you understand there still was some relationship dynamics. I mean, yes, working a job and being able to provide, yes, that was the basic standard. Being able to protect and provide, that got the man in the door. But I think that's some propaganda to think that the guy was beating her over the head with a club just because I can provide and take care of you. So you're going to get beat over here with a club. No, there was definitely some relationship dynamics and understanding and conversations. I mean, women. I don't buy the idea that women were just as downtrodden and beaten up by these men who they needed. I think it's more so a situation that when women needed men, families worked out. Soon as women didn't need men, now all of a sudden families don't work out. To try to circle that back and try to pin that on men for not being nicer or not doing more or not going above and beyond to be an above average man for this average chick that she should be happy with him. You're telling men basically get out there, tap dance in a top hat and be excellent for these chicks.
What you're saying is be excellent or pull up or like go above and beyond. I would view as like bare standards for being a decent human being. If your only way of getting a girl ever was like relying on the fact that she couldn't work, that means you're a weak man. That means that you just don't offer anything. You're nothing. Like you're just a body that shows up at a factory, puts something together, and then goes home and thinks that that's enough to like land you some sort of relationship. And in the past it was, but I think it's a little bit sad that our standards would revert to that and that we think it should go back to that. Like, oh God, like this woman can work, a job, and now the fact that my paycheck isn't enough to win me a wife means that I'm completely and totally lost and hopeless. I think it's time to like step up and like be an actual decent person, like figure out how to be emotionally available in a relationship, figure out how to be a good partner, figure out how to make a woman date you other than the fact that like society says she's not allowed to work a job and get a paycheck.
All right, I want to circle back to the beginning of what you said. I was going to cut you off, but I wanted to let you finish and get it all out. Circling back to the first thing that you said is that you're saying, no, you have to be a decent human being. You haven't first substantiated the claim that these men who were taking care of their families were somehow not decent human beings. You haven't substantiated that claim. You're just believing, I think you're believing on faith that they were terrible human beings. I think that's what you're doing. And therefore, when you believe that on faith, you can now say that, oh, well, you have to be a decent human being. You got to first substantiate your original claim.
Sure. So I would say that the emotional availability of men, the ability to communicate with...
What does that mean?
Being able to understand how somebody feels about something and being able to have like emotionally fulfilling relationships or conversation with somebody that extends beyond just being there, earning a paycheck, and having kids, right? Who listens to the other person more? Do women sit there and listen to men cry on their shoulder more, or do men listen to women cry on their shoulder more? Because if men have to listen to women and all their problems and crying on the shoulder, I think that's men being emotionally available. Right. So the fact that your emotional vocabulary is limited to either extreme anger or crying on their shoulder is showing exactly what I'm talking about.
Those were the examples that I gave.
No, those are the ones you gave. But every single time I'm talking about this, like people will go like, oh, like guys have to cry and break down. Like there is a whole gamut of emotion that people can experience. And if being emotional or understanding emotion is just like somebody crying on somebody's shoulder, there's way more to life than that. There's way more emotional experience than that. And I think that historically, I think that the archetype of man has typically been one of like stoic, emotionless, doesn't talk to anybody, has PTSD and commits suicide at 3x the rate, but doesn't complain about their problems, goes overseas, kills people, doesn't report about their depression, comes back and goes postal. Like these are like the classic like problematic archetypes of man that I think we're like kind of sort of having to work through now in society, because it's not enough to be that now and get a wife, because you can't just capture them with paychecks like Pokemon.
All right, going back to what I said. Now, I just want to make it clear.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear. I wasn't saying that those were the only two range of emotions. Those were just the examples that I gave in a conversation where I obviously can't write out an essay. So when I said crying on the shoulder or listening to her problems, like women come to the table with more emotions. They're more emotionally volatile. The person who they typically dump that on is the man. So I'm saying right there, even though men may not, be as talkative and want to come throw all his problems on her, the fact that he's there, like who's the guy who's there and listening? Who's the guy who's there and listening to her and talking to her and even helping her and giving her advice and even solving a lot of those problems? To try to say that, again, the term emotional availability, emotional maturity, I think, first things first, those are not really measurable, tangible, quantifiable terms, and women like to live in that safe space of talking about things in a way that they can't quantify it. But that's fine. Even if I go with you down that rabbit hole, that man lives with that woman for 24 hours. I don't think it was a time, well, maybe you go back far enough, but it's not a situation where men are just popping women in the mouth saying, "Shut up, I don't want to hear your problems." No, men, that's part of the deal. That's part of the deal. I think a small percentage of men could just beat their chest and say, "I ain't listening to your problem, go tell your friends." But I think most men are there for their women. So you're coming at it from a perspective, again, I'll go back to the point that I don't think you properly responded to. You started with the notion that men were just naturally bad people, and then now the game. But... Okay, well, you technically did when you said they need to be better people.
Yeah.
That implies that they weren't as good and they need to get better.
Yeah, I don't think men were bad.
I don't think. Okay, but I still don't think you substantiated that claim. I still don't think you substantiated either claim.
Yeah, okay. To be clear, I don't think that men were bad, okay? So I've written down what you said, and I disagree with almost every single point you said. I think all of these are wrong.
Okay.
So one, you said women come to the table with more emotions. They might come to the table with more emotions, but that doesn't mean they have more emotions. Men have plenty of emotions that they just don't know how to process and they don't know how to work through. If I had to guess, it's probably because from a very early age, men aren't really taught properly to deal with their emotions, because we tend to externalize things. When boys get mad, they want to like punch and hit things, and parents will say, "No, don't do that." So you're kind of taught to repress from an early age, whereas women tend to express things more through talking. Hold on, wait, hold on. You just talk for a whole like 5 minutes.
I'm giving you the thumbs up. You got it.
Okay.
You got it.
So when women express emotions as children, it tends to be through things like crying or complaining, and that's okay. So they're usually taught to process those emotions healthier, right? I think men tend to carry more of this like up baggage, repression, and shit with them through life. I think this is why men comprise like 80% of suicides versus women, right? I think it's because men have a lot of emotional problems that they can't process. When you say women are more emotionally volatile, I hear this claim over and over and over again. Women are more emotional. Women are emotional. Why? Oh, because they cry more. For some reason, anger is never viewed as like an actual emotion by any of the Redpill community. When we say women are more emotionally volatile, do they cry more?
It is.
Yeah, sure. But like guys will bump into each other at the club, scuff their shoes, and then somebody's dead like 5 seconds later, right? Like how many, like when you're hearing about things like domestic violence, like who's causing more of the damage? It's men. When you're looking at things like violent crime, like 98% are men, right? So when we talk about like who's more emotional, like yeah, women might be more sad or they cry or they do things, some of the times. But I would argue that that sort of emotional expression is way healthier than guys that kill themselves over stupid shit. And this is a huge epidemic. Wait. You said like 10 wrong things. I gotta go through all these, okay? When you say, well, you talk a lot, dude. So I'm gonna respond.
No, I get it.
If you want to go point by point, we can. But if you're gonna rattle off a bunch of things, of course I'm gonna rattle off a bunch of things. It's
all right,
fair,
let's okay. Going forward, let's go.
You said
closer. Hold on, real quick. Yeah. Just going forward after you go through my 10 things. Mm-hmm. Let's try to go closer to point by point.
Yeah, I like that. I like it.
I got caught off guard with this. I don't got my.
Sure, that's fine.
I want to write down some of this. I want to write down some of the shit you're saying, but
Oh, sure, I just use a notepad and computer. You said women dump emotions more on men. That's not true. Women do not have emotional conversations with men because they can't. Because men today aren't able to. That's why if you look at the differences between conversations women have with women versus conversations that men have with men. And every comedian ever has at least one joke in the routine where they've laughed about this, where a guy goes, hangs out with the woman of his dreams, goes home, and like, you know, his friends are like, oh, how'd it go? And he's like, okay. Like, oh, did you have fun with her? Yeah, she was cool. And it's like women will be like, oh my God, I saw this guy, he made me feel this way, he did this thing, and blah, 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 blah. There's so much more emotional unloading and sharing that goes on when women talk to women versus when men talk to men. That's just true. When you say men don't dump their problems on their women, yeah, I mean, maybe
they don't.
Okay.
I said they don't.
You said
women. I said women do that more. Just like what you just said. When a woman talks to a woman and she has so many things to say. Or the point that I was making is that when she's talking to her man, she also has so many things to say. So when you use that undefinable, unquantifiable term about emotional availability, I'm saying that he is being emotionally available to her if he's there to listen to all her shit.
Sure. I mean, I guess, but I think in general, I think men have a much harder time having these sorts of conversations than women do with other women. When you say men give advice or help people or solve problems or whatever, oftentimes, like as a piece of personal advice, this is usually somebody failing to listen. Oftentimes when people are complaining about something, they're not looking for somebody to try to like fix a problem. They just want somebody to be there to empathize with them, to hear a problem, and then just kind of do that. You said that emotional maturity and availability are not quantifiable / measurable terms. Sure, but like just because something is hard to quantify doesn't mean it's not important or it doesn't exist. Like maturity is hard to quantify, but we can definitely see that some people are more mature than others. Women want to talk about things they can't quantify. I mean, men talk about, dude, half the Redpill conversations are about things like sexual market value. And the last I checked, there aren't any like PhDs publishing math papers on how to like measure that concretely, right? Like these are like, everybody talks about these types of dynamics that are really hard to quantify. You say men live with women for 24 hours. It's not. You say men live with women for 24 hours. What the whole classic archetype and joke of a guy is, I want to get home from work and I want you to leave me the fuck alone, right? How many old sitcoms, how many episodes of Roseanne or All in the Family or any of these like old sitcoms, it's like the guy comes home from work, he sits down, and as soon as he does, the nagging wife comes and it's like, did you do this with the kids? Did you do that? And the guy's like, just leave me the alone. Where do you think the concept of a man cave came from? Men work, they come. Let me finish. I got to go through. If you want to go point by point after we can, but I got to respond to everything.
You're streaming. Hold on, real quick. You're streaming live on your show, so I understand this is like technically your show too. So I don't want to, you know, I'm being fair, but you're floating a lot of shit out there.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I felt when you were speaking. That's why I wrote it all down. Yeah.
That's why I said I got
like two things.
After you finish, okay, you got two more things.
Yeah,
after
that's
you finish
it.
your two more things, we're gonna go point by point.
That's fine.
So therefore,
I'm cool with that.
You know, yeah. Okay,
you said men are. You keep alluring. Or you keep alluding to this idea of like men popping women up. I'm not saying that men were like abusive, horrible fucking people. All I'm saying is that traditionally, the domain of like man in the relationship of men and women was to just like earn a paycheck. And I think that's pretty shitty. I'm not saying men were all like abusive,
Wait, hold
horrible.
on, say that again. Say that again. I'm sorry.
That in a relationship, traditionally, like if you go back like 40, 50, 60 years ago, or especially like pre-World War II, all men had to do was like earn a paycheck. That was like their biggest contribution to the relationship. As long as they earn a paycheck, they're like good. And I'm saying that now the standards are a lot higher. Men have to bring something to the relationship besides just a paycheck because women can work.
Is this a rage quit? Is the day?
I can't say shit to this guy, dude.
Today, if all women took a day off today, no one would give a shit.
Better how? Be top 1%? That's not real advice.